Welcome, people, to episode 1 of the One Mic podcast. My name is Eche, aka the Etch Maestro, aka Upper Echelon, the Etchetarian. Now, it's been a minute since I've been thinking about doing this podcast, and the time has finally arrived. And what better way to start with the light topic of bipolar disorder, man? Yes. And so, let me just take this opportunity to, introduce myself. So my name is Eche. I'm a 33-year-old teacher. And in 2015, something very pivotal happened that changed the whole landscape of my life. But bear this in mind. I used to be the shyest boy in London. Social anxiety crippled me, right? Then in 2015, I had what we call a manic episode. Now, what's a manic episode? A manic episode, this is when your mood is a 12 out of 10, right? So what that means is creativity like never before, ideas racing. I don't need to sleep, feeling more energized, feeling confident, determined, but at the same time, behavior is erratic, risk taking, racked up all sorts of credit card bills, got hustled out of hundreds of pounds, right? So decision making, not necessarily where it normally is. But my mood is a 12 out of 10. It's off the scale. If they could bottle up the feeling of mania, it would be the best-selling drug. Believe me, it's very alluring, especially from me, who was the shyest boy in London. And so I went from one extreme to the complete other end, having this manic episode. And then subsequently I was sectioned. So I ended up in the mental hospital against my will. And I stayed there for 4 weeks. I was forcibly medicated. Now, you don't know what it feels like to be told that this chemical is going to enter your bloodstream. And you have two choices once you've been sectioned, once you're in the mental health hospital. Option 1 is you take the pill, and then you show them your tongue to confirm that you swallowed it. If you refuse that option, then option 2 involves them getting the two biggest nurses, pinning you down. And as you scream and as you shake and as you scream, they inject you with these chemicals, all in the name of treatment. So I was forcibly medicated. I was tasered in 2015, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder, it's a mood disorder characterized by periods of extreme high mood, which is that mania that I was talking about, and extreme low moods, which is depression. And I think everyone kind of has an understanding of what depression is, so I don't need to go into much detail about that. So I got that diagnosis in 2015. The label is there. And bear in mind, this is a lifelong illness. This is a lifelong diagnosis. And following 2015, I was faced with a very serious question. Can I be a teacher with this diagnosis? Because I got qualified to become a personal trainer in 2016. So that was the first thing I did, having been sectioned. So I got qualified to be a PT. However, I then realized, you know what? I don't know if this is for me. So then I became qualified to teach 16, 17, 18-year-olds. But I was scared once I received the job offer, because I'm thinking, with this diagnosis, can I cope with the stress, with the workload, and the expectations that come with teaching? And so I was racking my brain, because I didn't want to be another statistic, another case study of a teacher who had a mental breakdown. But ultimately, I decided, you know what? Let me go for it, man. I don't want to live with regrets, right? But I'm dealing with this stigma. I'm dealing with the label. My whole life has turned upside down following this diagnosis. And I've gone through all of the phases you can imagine. Denial, a strong phase of denial, investigation, questioning the system. I'm angry about the treatment that I received from the police and from the healthcare system. The good, the bad, and the ugly, it's all there, right? Now, This diagnosis of bipolar disorder and my journey to recovery, because I've gone from a situation where I was surviving to a situation where I'm now thriving. However, I did it my way. I went off script. Let me tell you what the normal script might be. Eche receives the diagnosis of bipolar disorder, and Eche now has to take medication for the rest of his life. And Eche, every number of years, might have a manic episode and might end up in the mental health hospital. And this is the picture of my life, and I live a life full of regrets and untapped potential. That's one script that I feel was being written for me, right? I was told that I'm going to have to take medication for the rest of my life. But I decided, you know what? I think I'm going to go off script, right? Because some might call it stubbornness, but I'm like, I know that I don't want to take meds for the rest of my life. The rest of my life, that's a long time. And the side effect profile is mad. So I knew that, okay, I don't want to take medication for the rest of my life. So what do I have to do? What do I have to do in order to heal myself? And so this journey of mine, it's a story of how one became two. What does that mean? So growing up, as I mentioned earlier in this, I used to be the shyest boy in London. And that was my personality. Everybody knew Eche is very shy, very repressed. All of these thoughts in my mind that I was unable to express because I was afraid, because I cared too much about what people thought of me. So I lived a lot of my life in a repressed state of mind. Then 2015 happened, and that one persona became two, hence the bipolar disorder. Right? So now you had manic Eche, mania Eche, and you had depressed Eche. So now one has become two. And so for me, this journey since 2015, it has been a journey of making two into one, to shorten in the distance and to shorten in the fluctuations of mood. That's what I've been focused on. And I've tried so many different things, man. And that's one of the reasons why I'm making this channel, because I've learned so many things that I feel might be of value. So many things about psychology, so many things about personality, so many things about spirituality, so many things about the healthcare system, so many things about health and fitness that I feel might be of value. Hence why I'm sharing this information. So for me, it was a quest to turn two into one. Right? And so I'm in a situation whereby I managed to achieve stability of mood. Like my mood is absolutely stable. My mood is so stable that I went from tracking my moods every day for about 3 years. 3 years without fail, I would track my mood to look for patterns, to look for signs of mania, signs of depression. I went from tracking my mood religiously to realize then, listen, my mood is so stable that this has now become redundant. I don't need to track my moods anymore. And so I scrapped that system. Bear in mind, as I said, I've been a teacher for how many years? 6 years now. So in those 6 years, I haven't had to take a day off for mental health reasons. And furthermore, I've actually taken on more responsibility. So I've received a promotion, right? Taking on more coordination, managerial aspects. Furthermore, I've produced a book, I've produced an album, all while juggling this teaching role. And as I'm saying, this is me going from surviving to thriving. And so two becoming one. How did two become one? So what I realized from 2015, what 2015 taught me is that this body of mine is capable of confidence. Confidence is within this body. Confidence is possible. I've seen it happen. And so for me going from shy to knowing that confidence in this body is possible, I realized that, okay, it's buried within somewhere. So I need to take active steps to actually design and retrieve those personality traits that are laying dormant. Those personality traits were locked in the shadow. And 2015 brought it to the surface. And so I went on an intentional journey, an intentional quest to harness those traits. So I said, okay, you know what? In order for me to be confident, what do I need to do? I need to get out of my comfort zone, right? So I began to use fear as a compass. I'm thinking, what am I afraid of? And instead of avoiding those things, I would move straight forward in that direction. I would accelerate in that direction because I realized, listen, manic etche is not something that I'm aspiring to be. However, I can learn a lot of lessons from that manic etche. What if I can incorporate and integrate the best aspects of manic etche, right, into etche? Won't that be a powerful phenomenon? And so that's why I've taken it upon myself to push myself out of my comfort zone physically, mentally, right? And take traits from the manic etche. Because I'm telling you, mania is so alluring that there were moments in these past 7 years that I was praying, I was hoping for mania to kick in so I could feel confident again. But I then realized, listen, Etche, you don't need to be manic to be confident. Who told you you need mania to be focused and creative? That creativity is within you. You don't need to be manic to be creative, right? So for me, my journey has been about making two into one, okay? And so one thing that I want to talk about is this label and how the label can be weaponized. Right. So I got this lifelong diagnosis from the NHS. And the thing with the Western model, the West is a bit arrogant, unfortunately. The West is a bit arrogant because the West makes an assumption that their framework is the correct framework and the only framework that deserves respect. So according to Western medicine, I am mentally ill. I have a lifelong diagnosis. I'm in disorder. Bipolar disorder. But what I realized is that framework, it doesn't really explain where I am in 2023. There's a limitation, right? My journey in 2015, it was very spiritual, but there's no room for spirituality when it comes to the psycho-social model that we use in the West, right? If you start talking that religious talk, they tell you that you're delusional. So there's a certain arrogance when it comes to the way these phenomenon are interpreted in the West. So their framework has to be the only way. Medication, you're mentally ill. But I disagree. I have a different framework. Your framework doesn't describe my current reality. But are you telling me that I have to accept your framework? And this is one of my problems with the diagnostic model. They were so quick to make this diagnosis. What if they're wrong? What if it was a misdiagnosis? Right? These happen all of the time. But in their haste to get me and process me through the system, they slapped on a lifelong label on my back. Right? Now, fortunately for me, I don't feel the stigma of that. That's why I can talk so frankly in front of the camera. I don't feel the stigma anymore, but there's many people who do feel stigmatized, right? And so this label can now be weaponized against me because I might say something and someone says, oh, he's going through mania. He's off his meds. So instead of actually addressing the point that I'm saying, they can now go back to the label that was given to me to deflect from the points that I'm trying to convey. Okay. Now, my only plea is to understand that there's different ways of interpreting what happened in 2015. I have my own framework and the NHS have theirs. Who is right? Is there only one framework? If what happened to me happened in another part of the world, they might have taken me to a shaman. Right? They might have taken me to a shaman. They say, wow, you're really tapped into the source of things. I'm going through a spiritual experience, and they would actually honor that as opposed to medicating that. Right? But because I'm in the West, it's medication. What I'm trying to say is there's different frameworks. right? And maybe we need to consider the viability of alternative frameworks, alternative ways of understanding and interpreting these phenomena that are called bipolar disorder according to the Western lens. Now, if you want to get a more detailed understanding of my story, how I went from the shyest boy in London, A grade student, right, top scholar, right, first class degree, how I went from the shyest boy in London to ending up in the belly of the beast in the mental health system and then going on this wonderful road to recovery, then you can check out my book. It's called The War of the Mind, Prison by Another Name. The book is about transformation. The book is about the mental anguish that I had to go through following the diagnosis. The book is about the prisons of the mind. For me, personality was a prison. Chasing the high was a prison, right? Eating, binge eating was another prison. So the book is about freedom, it's about liberation, it's about transformation. And you can read the full details in there. Now, you can get a free copy of the book or you can purchase it on Amazon. And you can also listen to the album, which also explains my story. I will put a link in the description for all of these wonderful things, man. So stay tuned, right? This is just a little introduction to the wonderful world of Eche, right? So this is episode 1, the One Mic podcast, and I'll catch you on the next one.